From the Zimmerman Symphony Center in Canton, Ohio, this is Orchestrating Change. I'm Matthew Jenkins Yarashevitz, Associate Conductor of the Canton Symphony Orchestra.
And I'm Rachel Hagemeyer, Manager of Education and Community Engagement.
Welcome to Season 3 of our podcast. We are so glad you could join us.
This podcast navigates issues that exist in the field of classical music and the world at large. We invite you to listen with open ears as our guests share their experiences and as we discuss these often avoided topics.
We are joined today in studio by Quinn Mason, a composer and conductor based in Dallas. Writing for orchestra, wind ensemble, chamber ensembles, and more, Quinn has had his compositions played all over the world by ensembles such as the Dallas Symphony, Memphis Symphony, and San Francisco Symphony. As a conductor, Quinn has worked with Orchestra Seattle, MusicaNova, and the Greater Dallas Youth Orchestra. At only 25 years of age, he is already making a huge impact on the industry. He has now a Canton connection with his Irish dance suite having been performed by the Canton Symphony Orchestra. Quinn Mason, welcome to Orchestrating Change.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We've both had the pleasure of being able to meet you right before now. So would you mind just telling us a little bit about you, like how you grew up, what were you like as a kid, all that good stuff from the very beginning?
Well, quite certain I was not a very good kid. We all weren't very good kids, but
Many of us creative types, I would say
kids.
especially, certainly would say same thing.
It's quite interesting. I didn't really discover that I was creative until I was like 10. And, that's kind of late to be a child prodigy at that point. And I was aware of it. I was 10 years old going, that Mozart started earlier and things like that. But, it's okay. But
Late to the game.
well, yeah, and really discovered my creative kind of fire, I would have to say, in elementary school. Where I took a required piano class. It was, you have to take it for a grade and things like that. So naturally, people didn't want to be in there. But actually, I wanted to see if I could stretch myself. I had never tried an instrument before. I had been listening to classical music for a few years at that point. It was something I found on my own. And I wanted to try something different, and I wanted to see how music was constructed from the ground up. So I went to that class and progressed fairly quickly on the piano, actually. I know piano teacher gave out awards annually, and one year, the year 2007, I got one for excellence in piano. Oh. And with that came an opportunity to perform side by side with my teacher in a special concert for the school. And we played Haydn's Surprise Symphony. I had the easy part. And somehow still messed it up. But it was a really cool opportunity. That was the very first time I had performed in front of a crowd when I was 10. Yeah. And so from there, and I still play the piano. I learned more, and I still play. And then sometime after that, I started cello lessons. And I no longer play the cello, unfortunately, but that really gave me some ensemble experience. I played in an orchestra for 4 years, back stand, of course, because I never practiced. But just, being in, that was my very first time playing with other people. And from there, really, I found my way into composition through not practicing. Instead of practicing the etudes that my teacher would give me, I would write my own etudes and practice those, and then basically snitch on myself and take them to my teacher and said, so this is what I was doing instead of practicing. One day I did take one of those compositions to my teacher. It was like a cello solo. I was writing it and going, let me see if I can get my teacher to play this. So I took it to her, and she actually tried to sight read it. And It was quite interesting being there that young and hearing something that I had written come alive, something that didn't exist before I put it in front of the performer, and there's just a certain special kind of magic to that I discover, each time I work with an orchestra or a different performer, it's like the music doesn't exist until you put it in front of the performer, and then it exists in its own unique way. Like the way that the Toledo Symphony played Irish Dance Suite is unique and different from the way Canton Symphony has played it, And so with that kind of groundwork, I would have to say, really set the kind of the tune almost to really wanting to explore composition more. And so I did a lot of self-study. I had some mentors that gave me scores and things like that, recordings. So from an early age, I was exposed to the Beethoven symphonies, the Mozart, the standard repertoire. And on top of that, I supplemented that by one of my mentors taking me to rehearsals of the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, which is my local orchestra. And so I got to see those very same pieces come to life in front of me, via people on the stage. And so from there, I actually heard many large masterworks for the first time, like the Symphonie Fantastique of Berlioz and my all-time favorite piece of music, The Rite of Spring of Stravinsky. And so with all that, especially going to the Dallas Symphony rehearsals, then that kind of sparked an interest in conducting, because this was during the era of Jaap van Zweten, who until recently was musical director of the New York Philharmonic. Now we don't know where he's going, but I was there throughout his entire tenure with Dallas, so I got to hear exactly how he changed the orchestra and things like that, plus guest conductors and things like that. So, but more about that later. Yeah. And more self-study. I took my very first composition lesson at age 13, and it really paid off my senior year of high school when I won a composition contest that was sponsored by the American Composers Forum called the Next Notes High School Composition Award. It was the very first year they had done it, too. It was a national contest. They received 240 applications nationwide, and they only took 6 people, and I was one of the 6 people. So it was a big deal, and it I definitely credit that with the launch of my career and my very first real look into the life of a composer, because, as part of that award, which I won with a brass quartet, we traveled to Minneapolis, where they're based, and we got to work with professional performers closely. We had individual rehearsals with them and everything, and we presented all of our works in a concert. And so it was a very, very fun experience, and something I definitely wanted to do on a higher level. And so from there, came back home, started receiving more and more commissions, received my very first orchestral commission at age 22 from the Dallas Symphony, my local orchestra. It was premiered successfully 2 years after that. And I received another commission from them. But in the meanwhile, I started working with all these other different orchestras, like the South Bend Symphony, which is in Indiana. And I think the Mission Chamber Orchestra, based in California. And seems to have spread like wildfire since then, because more and more conductors see their conducting friends doing my pieces, and they're like, who is this guy? So they end up doing it too. So, one conductor tells 10 of their friends, and then their friends look at what they're programming and like, okay, let me get that. And so they end up programming it too. And so, from there, my pieces have been to the Memphis Symphony, the Utah Symphony, the San Francisco Symphony, and they've been around the world. Actually, they've been to Scotland and the Nevis Ensemble, and they've been to Italy with the Italian National Radio Orchestra, and just a lot of performances back here at home with different youth orchestras, things like that. And it was quite fast. It all happened quite fast, but orchestral music is something I love writing, and I'm very happy to see all of these performances happening. So from a required piano class to Canton, Ohio.
Hey.
I have to ask, at no point did you mention attending a conservatory? Was that not part of your musical journey?
Well, it wasn't a conservatory per se. I did attend college. I had a very weird college career. I started community college a week after I graduated high school. Did that 2 years. Then transferred into a school of music, specifically the TCU School of Music for a year. Found that it wasn't a fit for me. And then from there transferred into SMU as a non-degree student. Did that for 2 years and finished there right before the pandemic began. And so, just to be honest, I don't have a degree in anything. I just spent 5 years in higher education, learning, getting opportunities, networking, and things like that. But all of the credits just transferred. And just wasn't never in a degree program. But
Yeah, very interesting.
Well, it's worked out for you very well so far.
I hope so.
I was just curious. It's always fascinating for me to hear the different life journeys people take to get where they are.
Yeah. So you kind of just took us through like this whole, compositional journey that's, as you said, happened very fast. It kind of, for you, you started composing when you were 10, but all these commissions and all this stuff that has been happening. Can you kind of give us a little bit of a backseat view of what it's like to actually get a commission happening? Like, how did you get that first commission from the Dallas Symphony? Like, what actually goes into, do they just reach out of the blue, or like, how did that actually start happening?
That was the result of a connection I made when I was very, very young. My mentor used to take me to these community concerts. And at these community concerts, she would ask me, I would ask, she had a friend, his name is Don Stone. He's in his 90s now. But back then, he used to attend these concerts, and she used to sit me next to him. And then I would make conversation with him and I guess entertain him with facts about the music that I had learned from books and things like that. And he found that very fascinating. So I was very small when I met him, and he kind of watched me grow as a composer. And he was also one of the, he used to be the president of the Dallas Symphony way back in the 80s and things like that. So, but now he's like a board member, and his wife and him, they run a, what they call a new music fund. So they've commissioned major composers like Aaron J. Kernis. They've commissioned Julia Wolf and things like that. And one year they commissioned me.
Okay.
So they ran that new music fund, and they said, it's time, basically. And they gave me that commission at age 22, which took me 2 years to complete, but it was very successfully premiered, and it was a gamble that paid off, I would have to say.
Wow, that's very, very cool.
And we did that twice.
And again, so did they just reach out? Did your mentor just say, hey, we have this commission fund and you're up this year?
Something like that. Yeah. It was, they were watching me to see what quality of work I was doing. So,
right.
If I wasn't doing good work, I probably wouldn't have received that commission. So I guess hard work paid off.
Yeah, that is very, very, very cool.
And then the subsequent ones have just
it's a snowball
come
effect.
Up after that, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all of, they look at what that did, and then, they look at it and they go, okay, so this guy can actually write. And so it's usually, I've discovered, promotion and getting your name out there varies differently from composer to composer. Yeah. But for me, it's mostly been word of mouth in real life. So it's mostly just the result of people telling other people about me. Like, I don't know how Gerhard heard of my Irish Dance Suite. I know it was done in Toledo, but I don't know if he was there.
I know why he heard of it.
How?
I found it.
Matthew found it.
I found it. Yes. And I was hoping that he might, as a result of me finding it, offer it to me
How
to
did
conduct.
You find it?
But Google search.
A Google search. What did you type into Google?
This is a very good segue here, because the podcast that you are a guest on today was, of course, started by the Canton Symphony, by all of us last year, originally in response to the George Floyd protests. And we decided to think very long and hard about what we could do as an organization in response. And one of the ideas was, of course, the podcast. Then we have the first season of the podcast, and we get told time and time again that representation in this industry matters so much, and there simply isn't much representation of people of color in this industry. And so one of the things that we all realized we can do right now is we can at least program more music by minority composers. That is a decision that we all can make. Other things take more time. So we started searching, and for both historical composers of color as well as living composers of color. And you come up at the top of a Google search. And so then...
What did you search to get me at the top?
I don't remember exactly, but I went to your website and I listened to a bunch of your recordings. I was like, I really, really like this guy's music. We need to do something of his.
Yeah.
And so then, furthermore, when Michelle was saying, November, the second classical of the season, we need to make it small because it's the fall, it's going to be colder, cases might start going back up again, and then it ended up being a string-only concert. And so that's when I said, okay, so over the summer, I discovered this composer named Quinn Mason, and he has a piece called Irish Dance Suite for String Orchestra. And it is a great piece, and I know our audience will love it, and I think it would make a great addition to that program.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
This is how we found you. We mentioned your website. I've spent, I looked at your website, and you have a blog where you talk a lot about a lot of very different topics, which I'm going to dive into each of them a little bit as we go along. But you have one article that you wrote called My Inner City Rhapsody. And you said in it, what did you say? You said, for the longest time, I've wanted to make an artistic statement from the point of view of a composer from the inner city, because I realized that isn't a view represented in the concert hall often. And I was wondering if you could talk about that. And, this is the piece that I think you wrote it for the Dallas Symphony, if I'm remembering.
That was my first commission.
Yeah. So I wondering if you could talk about that a little bit. And when you were like, oh, my perspective isn't being represented in the concert hall. I don't know if that was like a light bulb moment for you, or if it's just something you always noticed. But I thought that was it was a really well written, and it goes into like all these really awesome musical details. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, about what that statement means. Yeah.
So even though I wrote that blog in 2019, the piece I worked on for 2 years, and this whole kind of recent trend, it wasn't really common back in 2017. Like I said, I've been going to Dallas Symphony concerts for years, and in 2017, when I received this commission, it occurred to me that I had never heard or seen a minority composer on either of the programs or as a guest conductor.
Right.
And it was quite interesting. I kind of sat on that for a while, and I was wondering, I'm probably like the only black composer they've commissioned in years, first of all. And second of all, what can I write that is unique to not only my story as a composer, but to my compositional voice as well? What do I want to bring to the concert hall that hasn't been done before? And so, when I was coming up with ideas about that piece, I decided to kind of base it on my own story, but not me specifically, but the story of a composer, nameless, who kind of goes through and struggles to find their own musical voice. And so that's why the composition itself was in 3 different parts, and kind of tells a story, how I wanted to tell a story about, what it's like to kind of be an underrepresented voice in the and even on the concert, which was September September 4th, 2019. Date probably doesn't matter.
Labor Day weekend or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a community concert, first of all, so there were no program notes,
Okay.
unfortunately. But secondly, I was the only living person on the program, which was a shame, to be honest. But I thought it was really interesting, especially those who came up to me after the performance, after the orchestra played my piece. And I went out to the lobby to greet the public, and lots of people from different backgrounds, races, and creeds came up to me and told me their own stories of struggle, not only in the inner city, but in other parts of the United States as well. And I said, that was the light bulb moment, basically, where I was like, this is why I do what I do, in order to make these stories that connect with a wide range of people. It doesn't matter if they're from a singular race or whatever.
Right.
A lot of people from different backgrounds connected to it, and it was pretty beautiful to see, really.
That's really
Definitely.
Cool. That's so cool.
amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. You talked a lot about your mentor and being taken to the Dallas Symphony for rehearsals from a very young age. At what point, what age were you when you were like, nobody or almost nobody on that stage looks like me?
Well,
and what was it like to realize that?
Yeah.
Well, actually, when I was growing up, the Dallas Symphony had one black member. I say was because he passed away recently, but he was in the double bass section, and I actually knew of him because when I was a cellist, I was in the program he founded called Young Strings, which was actually a program founded for young minority musicians, string players specifically, in order to get them experience, playing instruments in concerts and things like that. So I was in that program, and I met him a few times. But around the time I received that commission, like I said, and I noticed that the trends in programming, and then also who they were bringing in for guest conductors. Like, I think, before our current principal guest conductor, Gemma, came, I had never seen a woman on the podium ever. Actually, no, because back in 2012, they had a female assistant conductor.
They've had a couple female assistants, I think, through the years. At least in Dallas, they have,
Yeah, they have. But, like, as far as subscription concerts, no way.
Right.
I had never seen any. So, and I still haven't seen a black conductor on the podium. Well, Roderick Cox.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting that you, from whatever perspective you come from, you your eye goes to the thing that you identify with. For you, the black double bass player. For me, it's like when there's a woman bassoonist, I get like, I see something, you see the thing that you connect with, which, is why, and when we were recording this, I was actually just in Dallas at the Dallas Symphony, at the Women in Classical Music Symposium, and we talked about that very thing about how, especially in the female space, composers and conductors are, women conductors especially are still not as, but even minority conductors, black conductors, there's not a lot that are being given the spotlight. There are quite a few, but those who are being given the spotlight. So I think that's, I think it's so cool that your piece, you wrote it from the perspective of just lots of backgrounds can identify with it. Cause I think that's the thing that brings more people to the hall is just music that people can connect with and want to be involved in. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. If you open up the meaning of something, I've discovered and the more people that can connect to it, the better. And, that is, I think that I've approached that in my composition multiple times. This has always been a successful formula.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this program, Young Strings.
Yes.
I know that the founder has passed away, but we talked to some people on earlier seasons of the podcast with similar programs in other cities geared toward young minority musicians and often string players.
Yeah.
Is this program still going? And what have been some of the results of its alumni so far?
Well, I'm not too closely involved with it, but I can tell you they still do give concerts, and they still the leadership has changed, but the program is still going strong, I would have to say. And their alumni end up being very successful recording artists. They go off to universities. Some of them win jobs in orchestras and things like that. And so they still end up playing and making careers out of music because it's just such a supportive environment. At least, I found when I was there, it was a supportive environment, and it still is based on, their most recent concert that they gave. They are still, and it should be worth mentioning that these instruments that they give to the kids and lessons are free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool.
It's making it accessible to. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really, really cool. There's a lot of these programs that are going on, and I think they're all really great. And I'm really glad that there is something like that in Dallas, because I know that, Dallas is a big city. It's large. There's a lot of people there. But kind of
seen all of them.
I know. But kind of with this idea of you mentioned like trends, and you've said that word a couple times. In the past few years, I think the classical music world has decided to take a deeper look at ourselves and what is the music that we're programming, who are our guest artists, who are our conductors, who are our composers, to try to make it look more like the communities that we are serving. I think sometimes we might, there's the tokenizing that can happen with different things. And I'm wondering, as someone who is both a very young composer and a Black composer, do you feel that people expect a certain thing from you when it comes to your compositions? Do you think that, I don't know, I'm just wondering from your perspective over the past couple of years, do they want like something specific from you, or do you think that they're reaching out authentically and actually wanting to work with you?
It's actually a really good question. At first, it was like they came to me with, could you write about the civil rights movement, and could you write about what happened recently in Minneapolis? But the more they look at exactly what I'm writing and things like Irish dance suites and things like that. And the type of music I'm writing, they just let me do whatever I want and things like that. And so I'm starting to receive commissions that they're basically telling me, no instrumentation limit, no time limit. Because it's basically they're familiar with what I, what I'm done already and what I shouldn't say good at, because I'm always trying to stretch my horizons and become good at something.
Yeah.
But even when I go to concerts and I end up meeting the donors and I end up meeting the concert goers and things like that, they're always very, very impressed with what they heard on stage, Yeah. And, most of the conductors that end up programming my pieces, like Gerhardt or like Robert Moody, do a great job of programming. So it fits the overall structure of the program, and it does very well.
Yeah.
I remarked in a radio interview I gave for this concert at what a great pairing the Irish Dance Suite is with the Bloch Concerto Grosso, because of the third movement of that piece, which has a folk dance as part of the movement. I thought it was a really genius bit of programming on Gerhardt's part.
Very good. Yeah, I'm glad that you're being able to just compose what you want. That makes me very happy, because the pigeonholing that could be happening that
is rare. I would have to say, because you keep in mind how young I am, and I do realize I'm almost to 30. It scares me to think that, but
it's all downhill from 30. Let me tell you.
I hope not. But keeping in mind how young I am, but looking at what I've done, and this is not me, tooting my own horn. I'm, looking at what I've done and the stuff I've done up to this point. I've definitely earned the right to write whatever I want.
Oh yeah,
the right to write.
Yeah, you are allowed to toot your own horn too. That's okay. You're allowed.
I don't like doing that.
I know.
So, I will say first that yes, when we found you because of a Google search for composers of color. However, I would never have recommended to Gerhardt someone whose music wasn't good.
Right.
Exactly.
So, I mean,
yeah.
obviously, your music is wonderful, and we're just so thrilled to be playing it. I'm curious. You mentioned that at first you're getting these commissions for Black specific pieces, civil rights themed pieces. Mm-hmm. Did you fulfill those commissions, or did you say no? That's not really the direction that I'm writing in right now?
Well, one of them actually, it was a bit of a raw emotion. This piece, I'm referring to my Reflection on a Memorial, which is for string orchestra. That piece was actually commissioned by the Dallas. It was my second commission from the Dallas Symphony to be premiered on a concert of a memorial concert of victims of racial violence, which happened November 11th, 2020. So Veterans Day of last year, they held that concert, and they commissioned that piece specifically for that purpose. Well, because that happened not even that long ago, it was still kind of, like I said, it was raw. Not only to me, but to many people. And I decided that I wanted to open up the meaning of that piece to memorialize many different things, not only what happened during that summer, but those we lost during the pandemic, those we lost on Veterans Day and things like that. And that piece is open meaning, so it has the potential to connect to a lot of people. Well, I would have to say that because I did that, the piece has been very successful. It's one of my most popular pieces. Has been played by at least 8 or 9 different orchestras since its premiere last year. Most recent performance was in New York with James Blashley and the Experiential Orchestra. Great, amazing orchestra.
Grammy winning.
Yeah, they won a Grammy. Yeah,
yes.
But cool. the I would have to say the best performance of that piece was the San Francisco Symphony, and Edwin Outwater played that piece during this summer. And Edwin took it upon himself to introduce the piece to the audience, but he did something that I think contributed to the success of the piece, and he asked the audience to reflect with the orchestra as they played, reflect on those we lost during the pandemic, those that a dear departed family member. And then I remember when I went to go take my bow in Davies Hall, shook Edwin's hand, shook the principal cellist's hand. I turned around and the entire house was on its feet, like an entire standing ovation, and then a good review on the paper.
Yeah.
But the fact that it connected with the San Francisco audience, and it connected with all of these audiences, and I think I accomplished my mission. I would have to say.
I love that you're taking something that is personal to you or something that you really care about, and then and you're saying, hey, this is an experience I have. I want to open this up and make it so that other people can also identify with whatever piece of music, that you're making it universal almost, which I think that's just beautiful to me. The racial violence that's happened in the country is personal, but more so to people of color who have been directly affected by it, but taking that feeling and saying, okay, maybe you don't understand exactly what this is, but let's open this up, and I want you to reflect on your own loss that you've had. I think that's a really unique and very cool way to just get people to feel the music a little bit deeper. I really like
Absolutely.
that.
I mean, if you look at the title, Reflection on a Memorial, whose memorial?
Yeah.
What memorial?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very, very cool.
Well, so you are obviously very young still, fairly young still.
Really? No, I'm just kidding.
And you are coming of age in the music world at a time of a great change, but I'm still nonetheless curious, have you experienced overt or subversive discrimination in the industry because of your race?
Me personally, never.
Nice.
I would have to say I've never felt unwelcome in the concert hall.
That's good.
Ever since because I've been going to the concert hall since I was 10, and even growing up, I went to hear whoever was conducting or whatever was on the program, but every time I found someone in there to talk to, someone new to engage with, because we were all there in the house of music to hear and experience what was on the stage for everyone. It wasn't written for a specific person or group of people. It was written for everyone because music is a shared experience. And whenever I go to the concert hall, and a lot of people are actually glad to see that someone young is up in there. They're like, we need more young people in the concert hall, and I'm saying I'm working on that. But it's I've just, even in my compositional life, I've gotten the chance to work in many different areas of the country with different orchestras. I've always met some very, very nice donors, very nice conductors, players. I've had a great experience so far.
I'm glad that that's been your experience.
So your experience has been so positive. Do you have any recommendations for what we, as people who work for an orchestra, what can we do to ensure that we have a welcoming environment for everybody at our orchestra?
Oh, great.
Well, I would have to say it starts very early. Education is the key. You have to go into the schools. You have to do these outreach programs, give educational concerts, engage with the community, so you can create that next generation of music lovers that love to come to the concert hall and don't even think about, am I supposed to be here and things like that. They just come and they come to experience and enjoy the music, and it all starts very early. I mean, it started for me when I was 10 because my very first concert was a Dallas Symphony concert, and they played Peter and the Wolf with Sting narrating. But it was so many kids up in there. You didn't think about what color the kids were,
right,
who they were, or what were they supposed to be. It wasn't that. Because I had that very positive experience in the concert hall very, very early. It showed me that like this music is for me, and I can go to the concert hall and experience it whenever I want. So it definitely starts early. Education and engaging with the community, I would have to say.
Yeah. I'll get working. Here I am. But I kind of along the veins of recommendation as well, we've been asking our guests this season if they can give recommendations for the listeners of things to be engaging with. So maybe like in the theme of this conversation, maybe someone who's kind of new to classical music or only has been to a few concerts or just wanting to explore more. Do you have any recommendations of music or books or something that they should dive into to kind of help them understand this world a little bit better?
Yeah, sure. So we have this thing called the 12-tone system. No. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that.
Music theory lesson. Let's go.
But no, I mean, if you're just starting out, you might want to explore. There are different periods of classical music that you might want to explore. You might want to start very, very early in the Renaissance period and kind of work your way up to the classical period and then the Romantic period. And if you just search these periods up, you'll get some recommendations for some cool music from those periods. And then, the 20th century starts to get more adventurous, but you still get beautiful masterpieces that were written in the 20th century, like the Firebird of Stravinsky, a very accessible piece, I would have to say, all the way up to even the music that's being written today. The music of Jennifer Higdon is very accessible, and she's a cool person too.
Cool lady.
We did her Blue Cathedral in the season before the pandemic, 2019.
That's a piece to start with.
That's such a beautiful piece. Oh my God.
It's a piece that's personal to her. It was written for her brother.
Yes.
And it's an amazing piece to listen to. So that's a piece from the late 20th century. That and just listening to that, Higdon can show you that even beautiful music can be written today.
Yeah. That's really good recommendation.
And may I just say, Your music is also
we'll just put a plug in
to that.
See, I wanted to avoid myself.
We'll put a plug. Yeah, we're putting a plug in. Quinn
it.
Mason.
We can do it.
Oh my God, amazing! That's awesome. Yeah, I remember the first time I heard Blue Cathedral. I I think I heard it first with the Cleveland Orchestra, if I remember correctly. But the clarinet solo that kind of weaves itself throughout that piece is just, oh, it's beautiful. Such a good piece of music.
And a good friend of mine from graduate school was the principal clarinet sub on that concert.
Oh, yes, he
really?
was.
It was we needed someone, and Gerhardt basically was calling everybody he could, and no one could do it. And I was finally like, I got a buddy who I think would love to do this.
Yeah, when
And
we
you'll
did
like
it here,
him.
yeah. That's so good. Yeah.
So, Quinn, you are also a conductor.
Well, I'm still learning.
How did this aspect of who you are as a musician come to be?
Again, that started from my going to rehearsals at the Dallas Symphony, watching the guest conductors come in and just seeing how they worked with the orchestra, how they got along. Some conductors got along better with the orchestra than others, you know. But the different movements and things fascinated me. Plus, I grew up watching a channel. It was like a local public access channel on TV in Texas. It's actually nationwide. It's called the Classics Arts Showcase. And you can actually watch it online. It's a very fascinating channel that runs excerpts of arts clips 24/7. So they show things from dance performances to symphony performances to classic movies, animation, all that. So it's like they run like a different clip every 5 minutes. So it's like a never-ending stream of, and they used to show all sorts of old clips of conductors in there, old, new clips, and they used to show a lot of Herbert von Karajan and things like that. And so just watching those clips and then going to hear those really got me interested. I started conducting when I was in high school. So I got some experience from a very supportive band director who loaned me his book on conducting.
Nice.
Not only allowed me to write for the band, but to conduct the band as well. So I got to conduct them at the graduation.
Fun.
And so twice. And then I really started seriously studying in college, started in community college. They would do this thing called student conductors, where at the very end of each school year, they would bring up students to conduct the band. So a lot of people did that. It was fun to play for them too. That was because I was a percussionist in the band. And
I was wondering that. You were mentioning band, and I'm like, okay, he plays the piano, he played the cello.
What's the
What did
other
he do
one?
in band?
No, I did percussion throughout my high school and college career.
Fun.
You know, broke a bass drum on Mahler 4, but that's a different story for a different time. But you know, doing that, actually, some people told me I was good at it, so I was like, oh, I should do some workshops or things like that, because you know, really, there's no undergraduate degree in conducting. I mean, one of my teachers, Miguel Hart-Bedoya, is actually trying to do that in Omaha.
I was literally just about to say there is one now at the University of Nebraska.
Yeah, that's Miguel.
Yep.
Man, that's his dream too. He wanted to establish an undergraduate conducting program, and he's doing it. But yeah, when I was going, we had nothing like that. Miguel he was still at Fort Worth, and he hadn't done that yet. So I had to go to workshops. So I worked with Miguel for about 3 years, privately and in his workshops. And then I got the chance to work at a higher level this past summer, when I went to the National Orchestra Institute. I studied with Marin Alsop and James Ross, and that was a very great experience. So as to what I'll do in the future, I don't know. But I'm mostly spending most of my craft is being learned, because I'm not an assistant conductor or a music director. It's sporadic for me. Okay. So I get the chance to guest conduct from time to time. And so that's when I really have the chance to practice my craft. Right. But that only happens once every few months.
Yeah.
Next one happened in February. So
very cool.
Now, when you guest conduct, do you mostly do your own pieces, or do you often get to do
you do yours.
your own pieces mostly? Okay.
Yeah.
Helps with score study.
Yeah, well, yeah, that actually, yeah, I have to go back and learn my own piece. Can you believe that?
Yeah. Amazing. Well, so you compose, you want to you've mentioned you want to conduct a little bit more, and you're getting into that. What's that balance for you? Like, do you see yourself as a primary? Do you want to be a true composer conductor, like some of the,
Esa-Pekka Salonen or someone like that?
Yeah.
Love Esa-Pekka.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite living conductors.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
What do you see for yourself there?
Something, well, I know that that's something I'm still trying to figure out,
Right.
because I know that that's something that Leonard Bernstein had a problem with, because he was music director of New York Philharmonic for a long time, but he he couldn't really find the balance between composing and conducting during that time. So he ended up having to, you notice, after that, he really never took a music director job ever again. Not like that, but finding the balance, music director can take up a lot of your time, which is why I'm very, very impressed that Esa-Pekka could find such an original voice as a composer, yet be music director of San Francisco, Los Angeles, and things like that.
Yeah.
That's very impressive to me. But then you have people like John Adams, another inspiration of mine, who isn't a music director. He has a position at the LA Phil as a creative chair, but he's not their music director. So he only comes in, he gets to conduct the orchestra once in a while. He guest conducts his own music a lot because he's John Adams, of course. But Thomas Addis, who has a position at the Boston Symphony, not a music director, but he gets to go around conducting his pieces, conducts the Boston Symphony from time to time. So ideally, hopefully I want to end up with something like that, where I have a position at an orchestra where I can just, get to do my, the education component of my composition career, but also conduct the orchestra from time to time.
Nice.
And so we're definitely, I have some things in the works. I'm actually doing something similar to that this February, where I'm serving as composer in residence with the Detroit Symphony. But that same week, I'm also serving as their cover conductor.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah. John Adams. What a great inspiration. What about John Adams inspires you? Is his music?
His music is very colorful. I mean, very colorfully orchestrated, very different. He has the different time periods that he writes in, but it's all very, accessible. And if you're still looking for recommendations for a piece to start with, The Short Ride in the Fast Machine.
Short Ride in the Fast Machine. Yeah.
It's a very popular piece, very cool to listen to.
So rhythmic. His rhythms just,
absolutely
exciting.
Yeah.
It's
definitely worth listening to. But
I think that was my first exposure to John
Short Ride,
Adams.
Fast Machine?
Short Ride, yeah, when I was in high school.
He's such a cool guy too. Like, I got the chance.
You got to meet him.
Yeah, I got to meet him, and I got to show him my scores too.
Wow.
He actually made the time that he was, they were trying to get him out for a radio interview, and he sat down and was like, tell them to wait 10 minutes. And he looked at my scores.
Aw.
I was like, that's John Adams that just did that for me.
That's amazing.
So nice. I think one of my favorite musical experiences was watching Dr. Atomic at the Santa Fe Opera, and that just a really, really great experience.
And I saw The Death of Klinghoffer at the Met, which was, oh boy, it's heavy, but
there's a lot.
What a piece.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're now on the topic here of new music, living composers. Gerhardt said in his podcast episode a long time ago now, or not a long time ago, but in the first season, the second Viennese school caused a lot of people to be afraid of new music. That music is not generally the new music that is heard in today's concert hall, nor the music that living composers today are writing. How can you as a composer and us as the people who are going to program the music, including new music, what can we do to help break down those fears that people have?
It's all in creative programming, I would have to say. If you find a way to effectively program a piece, so the entire concert, it doesn't have to be a themed concert, but somehow find how the pieces relate back to each other, whether the composers are distant cousins or whatever, and just seeing how the different pieces of music, it's almost like building a really good meal whenever you're doing programming.
That's a great analogy.
That's
a wonderful analogy.
I just got hungry now.
Yeah, same. But like, if you just think of yourself as a chef in the kitchen, and you got to put together this plate for this very discriminating guests, but you want them to have a certain flavor palette. Like, if you want something salty to blend with something sweet, you got to find an effective way to do that. And with your programming, if you want to have the Berg violin concerto on there, you got to follow that up with something like the Schoenberg Transfigured Night, because, Berg was a student of Schoenberg. And so, you have the things, and you can do like the Webern in Sommerwind, which is actually a very early work of Webern. It's very tonal. Like it doesn't sound like him at all. But if you want to have all these three composers on that program, that's a possible program. But if you want to like do it nowadays, where you introduce a new composer on the program, if you have like a great example is the Beethoven Seventh Symphony. If you want to introduce the music of Carlos Simon on your program, he's a new black composer. He's also a friend of mine. You can do his Fate Now Conquers, which is quite interesting because it was written as a response to the Beethoven Seventh Symphony.
Oh, okay. That's
and
nice.
So by programming that Beethoven, which people are going to come for,
right.
They're going to come for that.
Yeah.
But you can also introduce them to Carlos Simon.
Yeah.
We're doing something very similar in February. We're
with
doing
Rick, yeah.
Sibelius Symphony No. 3 and Rick Robinson's essay on Sibelius, which is based on the Third Symphony.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah.
You know what might be interesting? If that's a great program. And if I were to take that same program and take it to another orchestra, I would put at the very beginning of it William Grant Still's Elegy in the Memory of Sibelius.
Threnody in Memory of Sibelius. It's interesting that you bring that up, because the Youth Symphony in their next concert cycle is playing Sibelius 1, and the concert will also feature still Threnody in Memory of John Sibelius.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
The score and parts are sitting on the desk over there if you want to see them.
There
Yeah.
they are. Awesome. Well, so like the future of the orchestra, the future of composition, what do you see as the future of orchestral composition? I know with, bringing in, bringing in folk traditions has been common for a long time. Bartok, everyone has brought in like folk traditions.
Vaughan Williams, my favorite composer.
Yes, we know.
I didn't know.
Well,
Quinn didn't know. That's
now
true.
Quinn knows. Now Quinn knows. But what do you see as, we're still, taking from folk music? What do you see as the future of orchestral composition moving forward? What are you seeing from your friends like Carlos Simon and other people?
Well, like I said, that Carlos Simon was written in response to the Beethoven. Definitely, we're going to see a lot of pieces for contemporary composers that reflect on the composers that came before us and things like that. Even one of my current commissions is going to be a prelude to the Beethoven Ninth Symphony called On the Note of Joy. And basically looking at Beethoven, the impact of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony almost hundreds of years after it was premiered. And you're going to find a lot of composers looking at the impact of the composers that came before us and responding to that to a new generation in order to make sure that that composer or work is now accessible to a now newer generation of concert goers, because a lot of people say that the orchestra is a museum and we're starting to play things that people have heard 1,000 times, but you can play it as many times as you want. You just got to make it fresh. You got to find a way to make sure it sounds new every time you play it, or put a new perspective on it. So a lot of younger composers, I would have to say, are kind of looking back and doing that, looking forward at the same time.
Yeah.
We've talked many times about the dual role of an orchestra as both a museum and a gallery. A museum as in playing the pieces that came before us, the beloved core repertoire, because the only way that it's experienced live is if we play it, unlike a painting that hangs always in an art gallery, an art museum. People can see it whenever they want, but for people to see the standard rep live, someone has to play it. But we, of course, also have the gallery role as well, to introduce new art and artists to the world.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as we're kind of like, coming to the end of this conversation, sadly, we've talked a lot about accessibility and bringing in the new, and we're talking about new music, and you've been a part of the orchestra from such a young age, and so have I, and so have you. And
I don't remember the first time I went to the orchestra. I was quite young.
It's what do we do? How do we get more young people involved, more diverse audiences involved in what we all three love so much about the symphony, do you think?
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier about the whole education thing. But, that when I was saying education, I was specifically referring to the younger, kids, But if you want to involve, like, those who have never been to a classical music concert before, who are adults,
right,
then that right there, that requires a lot of community engagement right there. You have to take a string quartet into the community center or give like these public concerts. The Dallas Symphony is doing something right now called the concert, I almost said fire truck, the concert truck, where they have like Dallas Symphony musicians and they take them around the city in the concert truck. The New York Philharmonic did something similar this past summer where they had like a pickup truck. They or was it a van? I can't remember. It was one of those two, but they put musicians in there and they took them around New York to play on in Central Park and on public sidewalks and things like that. And that's basically to kind of give people a taste of what's going on in the music now, what it's like for to experience live music with actual musicians, and hopefully, kind of entice them to come to a classical music concert, whether it be a piano recital or a string quartet or even a symphony concert. That form of community engagement I found has been very successful and definitely boosts attendance, I would have to say.
Yeah.
So we always end every episode of the podcast by asking our guests the same question. And it's very open-ended, so answer however you feel moved. How do we orchestrate change?
Start early. Just like I said, start early, but it's not too late to start.
Right.
It's not too late to start. You can. There's always something you could do at any time in order to spread the goodwill of music and the joy and beauty of live performance. I would have to say that.
I love that.
Excellent.
Quinn, this has just been really fun. This has been a good time talking with you. It's nice to just, talk about the music that we love and to see someone who is a composer right now writing music for just a lot of people to experience. And I love the way that your attitude is towards the music that you write. I think it's going to make people connect to the music. And we obviously are seeing that because a lot of people are playing your music. So I've enjoyed this. This has been really great.
I have to say, it's been particularly awesome to have you here.
With
us
it's been really
person.
Nice.
There's a synergy in the conversation that's different than over Zoom. So again, we're so thrilled that you're with us to hear your piece, Irish Dance Suite, performed this weekend. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Enjoy it.
Quinn Mason, composer and conductor, whose Irish Dance Suite was performed by the Canton Symphony Orchestra.
Orchestrating Change is a production of the Canton Symphony Orchestra.
Our theme music was composed by Eric Gould and performed by Derek Snyder and Tim Adams.
Our audio engineer and mixer is Nathan Maslick, with video and audio editing by Shoreline Media.
Thank you for listening, and see you next time.